Josh Allen had a really great day. So,
Yeah.
but we're just going to move on to day 4 because
That's like casual
that's normal,
news now.
I guess. Yeah. That's so nice to say.
You're now listening to the Wandering Buffalo podcast with your hosts, Andrew Chang and Justin Goddard.
Hello and welcome to the Wandering Buffalo podcast, a show on the Built-in Buffalo Network. My name is Andrew Chang. Alongside me is my co-host Justin Goddard. Tonight, we were going to do an all-time Buffalo Bills draft episode, but with how weird last week was and how exciting it was to have training camp back, we figured we'd just take this episode to go in a different direction. So tonight, we're going to focus on all the news that has kind of leaked out of training camp. As always, you can find us on social media, podcasting platforms, and even on YouTube by searching The Wandering Buffalo Podcast. And in addition, you can find other amazing shows that we are affiliated with on the Built-in Buffalo Network by looking up the Built-in Buffalo Podcasting Network. How you doing tonight, Justin?
I'm good, man. Thank you. Just fresh off of a pretty intense weekend of camping. We did some. The fiance and I.
Hey.
We did a little off-grid camping, tent camping. Ended up finding a really cool hiking spot. It was kind of like we just walked up a riverbed and we ended up climbing 5 waterfalls. It was one of the sweetest hikes I've ever did. It was really good to kind of get out there, disconnect a little bit. I've missed a lot on training camp news, so I had to do some catch up, but it was good, man. Really good.
That's really nice to hear. And wow, you just had quite the exciting 2 weeks. So for those of you who are listening, Justin got engaged last week.
I did.
And then 7 days later, which is today, it's his birthday. So there's a lot going on in Justin's life right now. He's trending in the right direction.
The dirty 31.
He's doing good. I'm really happy to see that everything is going good in your life. Plus, I saw those photos and it's really nice.
Yeah,
really nice
it started out as a very casual hike, hey, let's go check this out. And we walked for a while and we came to the first waterfall and we were like, yeah, we can probably climb that. And then as we got up to the second, third, fourth one, there was people had left climbing ropes on them to get up them.
Sure.
So getting up was pretty easy. Getting down, a little sketchy.
A little sketchy?
A little sketchy for my very conservative nature, but made it back in one piece. Didn't injure myself until we were actually at the campground packing up.
Right. You know, that kind of reminds me of, have you ever been to Zor Valley?
I have not.
Oh, you gotta go. I think it's about an hour south of Buffalo, and there's a couple of ways you can enter this park, and the one that I always go to, there's a fork, and on the right you could take the steady slope down and into the water, or if you go left, there's just a giant drop off that you can scale down. Every single time I've gone there, I have chosen the left path.
How do you not?
Going down it is okay. Going up it is incredibly scary because I don't know what it is. Looking down is not bad, but climbing up and then looking backwards, thinking oh my god, if I slip, I'm just gonna go tumble down for a long, long time.
See, I always prefer going up because I can very carefully put certain weight on my footholds and know that I'm pretty secure. Going back down, it's kind of you got to reach for them, and I hope that's a good one I think it is.
Well, regardless, you and I should go do a camping trip.
Let's do it.
And speaking of camp, let's talk about training camp.
Transition.
Which is tonight's episode. It's basically going to be a giant Buffalo Bills news update, but we're just going to recap everything from training camp, from the first week of training camp. Speaking of which, this is the first time that I can think that next Sunday we're going to have football. next Sunday we're going to have football. Next Sunday we're going to have football, and so on and so forth. That's like awesome. Like that gets me pumped. So without further ado, let's dive into the day one notes here. And first things first, it was held at Highmark Stadium, and from what I know is that it's not going to be back at St. John Fisher College. So I mean that's good, right? I'd rather not, I'd rather enjoy training camp being at Rochester, but that's only because I'm purely selfish and I like having the team close to me. But it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the team to pack up and move for training camp, even if it's only an hour away. I never really understood the logistics behind it, but I didn't really care because it was benefiting me as a Rochesterian. Like, could you imagine if we were the Cowboys, or if we were Cowboys fans, and training camp was being held in California in a different time zone? Like, that would make no sense to me as a fan, and I would be kind of annoyed by it. It's like purposely putting your team on an away game the entire preseason and training camp. I just don't understand that one.
Yeah, same as you. I have the little bit of a selfish aspect, being that living in Rochester, it's kind of right up the road. But also it kind of offered this like intimate opportunity to be with the team versus like it was open to the public. What was it, Saturday? And it's held like in the stadium, right? So there's still, the walls up to the bleachers and everything. It's not like you're ground level, feet away from these players and stuff. So I do think, like, as a fan, there was some really fun and interesting opportunities at St. John Fisher. But from like an organizational standpoint, the money that they dumped into the rehab and training facilities and all the extra work that they've put into that building, not to mention all the extra space they have. They have the indoor practice facility, they have the outdoor, they have the stadium itself, especially kind of in the COVID times where you have to be able to spread out a little bit and separate some things. I think logistically it does make sense to stay in Orchard Park, but also being away from Fisher for a couple of years, I think we've talked about this in the past. I don't really see it coming back at this point.
Yeah, neither do I. And I forgot to note that we're going to go in chronological order, so, you'll most likely have already heard about some of this news, but we still like to deliver our takes on it, and we'll get you up to speed with everything if you haven't heard about it. So moving on with day one, Deion Dawkins and Ike Bacher were both on the COVID-19 protocol, which kind of sucks, right? I thought this whole thing was slightly behind us, but this is a good reality. Well, not a good, but this is a reality check that this isn't behind us, and this situation is still looming upon us. And I just want these two to be healthy, and I think as I've gotten older, I've really realized how important the offensive line is. It's very commonly an overlooked position, especially if you don't watch football like that, but it's everything. And they say you win in the trenches, and I think Brandon Beane is all about that, which is what you get if you're, protege of Dave Gettleman. Maybe he's not a protege. I think he's a little past him at this point. But you can see that Brandon Beane truly believes in that with his resource allocation on the offensive and the defensive lines. It's huge. So not a great way to start off camp, not having the offensive line, which never had the starting five together, not to have their starting five together to start camp.
Yeah, a couple things on that front. It's a very unfortunate way to start the season, and again, hope both the guys are healthy and come through it okay. But assuming that at least it's out of the way early, I guess. I don't know if that's bad to say, but it does give us a chance to get a look at some of the younger guys whose reps would have been limited in a off-season setting. With Deion Dawkins in particular, and to a certain extent, Ike Bacher, we kind of know what we have in them. You know who they are. I think there's still a little bit more to learn about Bacher, but we saw him in starts last year. He looked, at least at a passable starter level. Maybe he can go up a little bit. What I didn't like about this is pretty much right from the rip, we started seeing some shuffling for Cody Ford.
Oh, yeah.
And you and I had talked about this in the offseason. We talked about it in our position review. We've talked about it several times. I just want to see Cody Ford in one spot and see how he looks there with some time on task, getting the reps in one position, knowing who he's playing next to. All that stuff that goes into the offensive line that he hasn't had that continuity with yet. It's like, oh, we drafted you as a tackle. Maybe you can play left tackle. Maybe you can play right tackle. Maybe you're better as a guard. And he's played everywhere with center. And I just want to see him anchored in one spot with consistent players next to him and really see what we have in him, especially coming up on a contract year.
Right. And I will say this about the Cody Ford situation, right? So, Bacher, Dawkins gone, right? Could you imagine, so theoretically, we can safely say that Spencer Brown, which we know got slotted in there. Could you imagine Spencer Brown left, Cody Ford, Mitch Morris, Feliciano, and then Williams? So it literally would be like very, very fresh veteran. Like, it makes sense that they would throw him on the right side with Darrell Williams, because you don't really want two new-ish people kind of ping-ponging off each other who have no real experience in that position. Could you imagine they just kind of look at each other, go like, what are we doing here? Like, well, I don't know, but we're going to figure it out.
What are you doing?
Yeah. So it makes sense that, OG Bobby Johnson was like, nah, let's just have him next to Darrell Williams, slot a veteran. Good. It will help Cody Ford understand what he needs to be doing when eventually he does kick back to the left side, which I think he's going to do, which I think he should do. I think he always looked better on the left side than the right.
Every day with him, I have more questions than answers.
Yeah, and, I guess it's a good thing we got to see Spencer Brown get thrusted into first-team drills, because you get to kind of get a glimpse of where he's at right now. At least us as fans, which is cool, because for a third-round pick, that's a pretty high draft pick in terms of resource allocation. So it's a nice sneak preview of what we can expect from him down the road. Moving forward, Jerry Hughes failed his physical, and he's going to start off the season on the injury list. It sounds like a calf strain. Nothing that I'm extremely worried about, but it's not ideal for our best and most veteran defensive end to be injured to start off camp. Although this does give an opportunity for our first-round draft pick, Gregory Rousseau, to get thrusted into first-team drills. And from what I'm hearing, the man is showing out, Justin. And I'm excited and happy to hear that, because the way I thought about Gregory Rousseau was like a piece of clay that we're going to have to mold, and it's going to take a long time for him to get where he needs to be. And that's not to say that that's not the case, but the fact that he's showing out already might be an indicator that he's maybe further along that trajectory path than I had originally thought, or maybe we have originally thought as fans.
Yeah, so to your point, I agree with you to an extent. Kind of with Hughes, I have a similar take as the offensive line, where I'm not really concerned with Hughes missing the start of camp. It's not really sounding like he's going to be missing extended time or anything. And we know who Jerry is, right? So in the short term, this is going to free up some snaps for Rousseau, Basham, even Epinesa to an extent. All the news I've heard from Rousseau and Basham have been glowing thus far, and even more so for Epinesa. I'm kind of holding back my excitement because the pads haven't come on yet.
Yeah.
I definitely think Rousseau has the athletic ability, the tools, all that. And I think that's kind of easier to show without the pads on. So we'll see once it's, full contact, we're going live, all that, what he ends up doing. But similar to you, I was kind of looking at him just based on the whole narrative around him of, this is going to be a project player, blah, blah, blah. The more I look at it, the more I'm like, maybe he's not really a project player. We didn't see him the year before the draft. So maybe he is ready to go and he's going to be further along. He does seem like a very mature young player. He does seem like he's ready to come in and do the work. And if they can work with him and untap some of that potential, maybe he could be dangerous year one. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, as I'm going to draw a parallel here, and maybe I'm a little off, maybe I'm a little wrong for doing this, but remember AJ McCarron, Nate Peterman, how they were supposed to be the starter for basically the entire year, and then that lasted all of
a week,
a half of football, and then they were like, all right, Josh, get in there. Like, mainly Nate Peterman was like so bad that they were like, Josh can't be worse than this. Right. And then they threw him in there. So I'm not saying that those two situations are alike, but because I have a lot more respect and faith in our other defensive ends, but who knows?
But it also kind of goes with Bean's draft strategy of taking these players with the physical gifts and
draft and develop
and kind of betting on the physical tools. And sometimes guys like that are just better when the lights are on,
Yeah.
So to speak. We usually play Sunday at 1, so there's not as many lights on, but when you can practice and you can practice technique and all that till you drop dead, but when the lights come on, can you beat the man across you or not? And Rousseau seems like the type that might be even more of a gamer than a practice player to me.
Right. Moving on to the end of day one notes, Brandon Beane and Cole Beasley talked to the media as well as other people, but we're going to focus on these two. So Brandon Beane opened up about the possibility of a contract extension for Allen, stating, it would be great to get it done, and if it's not done by this year, they have all of next year to get it done. And that's exciting, right? And we're in that area or that time frame where if something's happening, it's going to happen soon. And for the most part, I think Brandon Beane's being very transparent, and he's proven that he's a very transparent person when it comes to delivering news to the media. So I'm going to take his words for face value and say, hey, if it doesn't happen this year, we're going to get it done next year. And that's okay, because we have the 5th-year option picked up on him, which is a steal for Josh Allen, because people close to the team, like Thad Brown, tweeted out that Allen looked super good on the first day of camp, like MVP level good. So he picked up exactly where he left off, which is amazing to hear.
Yeah, as far as the transparency you talked about with Brandon Beane, it's one of my favorite things about him. Around draft season, there's a little bit of more storytelling going on from him, but that's, to be expected. For me personally, I'd rather get this deal done sooner rather than later. And that's mostly for me because right now, Allen will never be cheaper than he will be going forward.
That's true.
Unless he takes this, horrible step backward and just stinks, and then, where's the fun in that? But I'm looking at the Dak Prescott situation, where they tagged him for 2 years, and they got a decent deal for those 2 years, but then they still end up re-signing him to the long-term deal, and it ends up costing him, I think it was something like $8 million more for average annual value. Yeah. And now you have, 2 more years of your starting quarterback, your franchise face, kind of wondering if you're committing to him or not, and then you end up paying him more than you would have anyways. Yeah. So for me, this contract isn't a matter of if, it's the when. Mm-hmm. And, barring any sort of monumental regression going forward, which I don't see, it's only going to go up from here, so I'd prefer to get it done sooner than later.
Right. And if you're wondering what that knocking noise was, that was me, knocking on wood on my desk, because Justin said, unless Allen takes this crazy step backwards, I was like, gotta knock on the wood. Let's hope that never happens. Moving on, Beasley talked to the media, stating that the whole Twitter situation was blown out of proportion, and I think it really was. And we had Bruce Nolan on our last episode, and to Bruce's point, Cole Beasley isn't the only one to go out there and share his voice and stance on the COVID position. And if you think that he's the only player in the entire NFL organization to feel that way,
you're nuts.
Yeah, you're nuts. Like, the world doesn't revolve around Western New York. It just doesn't. And I don't know. He also said that he would stay off of social media when the season starts. So if you're worried about him like posting and sharing his opinions and views or whatnot, if you think that's toxic, well, he's not going to be on social media. So I guess that means no news is good news, right?
Right. So what I really liked about Beasley's statement is it seemed to be kind of written, and he took the time out to fully flush out what he was thinking and what he wanted to convey. And I think his statement that he made was much more concise than kind of trying to put together what he was saying on Twitter. And I've been on Twitter for a very short time, and the responses on Twitter, it's two ends of the spectrum, and you get nothing in between. It's no like, well, I look at it this way, but I could see this point. There's nothing in between. It's pros and cons. So what I liked about his written statement is that he was kind of able to convey where he was coming from a little better. Mm-hmm. And whether you disagree with him or disagree with his points, I do have some respect for kind of fleshing out his stance more of like trying to be the veteran presence, having a voice for younger players in the league and fringe players who aren't guaranteed all of this money. A lot of these players have, good contracts for what you and I will make in our lifetime, but also they've worked their whole life to get to this point. It could be over in 2 years. So I like that he kind of cleared that up a little bit, and that he was trying to be that voice. But by far my favorite part of the whole statement is that he was going to be off of Twitter during the season. I'd like to I'd like to focus on football. I'd like the team to be focused on football, and it seems like we'll get that going forward.
Sure. So let's move on to day 2. Josh Allen picked up right where he left off on day 1, as Allen wowed the offense by throwing an absolute laser to Beasley. And apparently this throw was so good, it would have gone at least 50 or 60 yards for touchdowns. For a touchdown, not touchdowns. Well, he had a couple of passes to Beasley where this happened, but this was the most prominent one. It was so good that the safeties reportedly had no time to react. And this was the throw that Emmanuel Sanders said, like, it was crazy. Like, mouth dropping. I've been in the league for 12 years, so I'm excited about what they've created out here. I think that we got an opportunity, obviously. So, if that doesn't say anything, what does? Emmanuel Sanders has been in this league for quite some time, and, he's probably getting us hyped up a little bit. But for him to say he's never seen something in the league, and seeing anything like that in his time being in the league is insane for me.
Yeah.
That just shows how much of a unicorn Josh Allen is.
So leaving Josh Allen out of it for a second, just every day that goes by, I love more and more that Emmanuel Sanders is part of this team.
Oh, yeah.
He's just, he's, 34?
Something like that.
33, 34. And every time I hear from him, every time I see him on the field, he still just looks like a kid going out there having a blast. He seems super fun. He still seems like
he's 34.
Yeah, he seems like he's just having a great time with it. Hearing what he had to say about Josh Allen's play, this is a guy that's been in the league for 12 years, and also, like, it's not like he's been playing with scrubs. He started. I think he started with Big Ben. He's played with Peyton Manning. He played with Drew Brees. Like, you're talking
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, you're talking. Big Ben probably ends up having a Hall of Fame career. Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, those are both 2 first ballot Hall of Famers, and for him to be saying
no, I'm just kidding.
For him to be saying like he's never seen throws like this, like, that's saying something,
Yeah, for sure. And moving on, Boogie Basham. We kind of touched upon him a little bit on the day one notes, but he put a stain on Josh Allen's really, really good day. Apparently, he tipped a pass near the end zone, and the ball just skyrocketed up, and Basham was able to, find it, secure the bag, aka the ball, and then just tumble into the end zone for a touchdown, which tells me that they're playing with a lot of, force and tenacity, which I love, especially coming from a second-round draft pick. So he's already showing out, and I love it.
Yeah,
I'll take any.
So
go ahead.
Sorry. What I really liked about hearing about this play was it didn't sound like a play where the ball just kind of fell into his lap. The way I read about it being described and whatnot is that it was like a real poise and focus to like stay committed to the ball, really track it down, secure the ball, and then keep moving. I see a lot of this kind of the intensity plays being made out of the younger guys on the team. Thinking back to mini camps with Epinesa had the little skirmish with Feliciano after he had a pick six himself. I love seeing the highlight tape plays out of these young guys just really going in there competing and being a second round pick. Yes, he's a high draft pick and probably pretty secure on the team, but going out there and trying to earn it, and it really kind of fits with that McDermott philosophy of earning everything. So I love to see it.
Yeah, they're hungry. They're humble, hungry, and young.
Playoff
which is
caliber.
Awesome. For sure. We're just going to use all the McDermott euphemisms throughout this entire episode.
I watched an interview with him after one of the training camp practices, and it was like 4 questions total, and he answered with humble and hungry 3 times, and I was like...
Yeah, I saw that.
I love this dude.
Okay.
He's like, humble and hungry.
Yep. He's like, what was that?
He had the giant bucket cap on, too.
Oh,
the safari hats.
Yeah,
I gotta find one of those.
Definitely, it's serious. That's for sure. Moving on to the end of day 2 notes. Oh, actually, before we get to the end of day 2 notes, I think in this practice, Emmanuel Sanders caught a deep pass from, I think it was Allen for a touchdown. But it's nice to see that he's getting chemistry in this offense, and he's already proven to be a good fit in this scheme, which is really nice to hear.
I agree. Yeah, I love everything that I've seen from Emmanuel Sanders so far.
Get that. Could you try again?
Just see
Emmanuel Sanders is awesome.
Yeah, get that down, Siri.
Jeez, sorry about that. Moving on to the end of notes here on day 2. Saran Neal and Jacob Hollister, right? So Saran Neal intercepted Mitchell Trubisky in practice, which is nice. And, well, I guess nice for Saran Neal, but not great for Mitchell Trubisky. Right? It's just like, oh, Mitchell Trubisky got intercepted? Oh, no. Oh, wait, he's a Bill. Right. It's like, oh, wait, I got to root for I got to want this guy to be real good. And then Jacob Hollister got injured, so he's day-to-day with a back injury. So, what are your thoughts on those two notes?
Yeah, Saran Neal has kind of been, from the accounts I've heard, making a little bit of noise this camp. And he's a guy that's kind of been around as a special teams ace. And it's kind of cool seeing him making a little bit of noise because, he was kind of a draft and develop player. And I believe he's going into year 4 now. And it seems like he's kind of been getting groomed in the background. Maybe he steps in, he takes over that Dean Marlowe role, and we don't really miss a beat there like I've been worried about. Dean Marlowe is one of the low key losses this year that I was kind of concerned about because he did play significant snaps, and we kind of talked previously about does Damar Hamlin come in and take over that role as a rookie. And now I'm kind of looking at it as like maybe the veteran end of this roster is more secured than I really think. We've seen a lot of the draft picks from being kind of just make the roster. But as I look at it more, it's like, maybe Damar Hamlin gets practice squad for a year, and maybe Saran Neal is ready to, kind of take on a bigger role. And I'm here for it if he's ready. I've always kind of liked him as a player. He just hasn't been ready or hasn't been given the opportunity. So if it can be kind of a draft and develop situation where we see more out of him this year, I'm all for it.
I will say this real quick. We got to get to a quick break, but there's a reason why free agents stayed away from Buffalo. If you're a low draft pick and you got picked by the Bills, that's not... I mean, it's a great thing, but, at the same time, you're just like, oh, man, I got my work cut out for me. I got to put in work to, try to make third string or, second, literally anything. I got to contribute on special teams. Right? This team is really good. There's a reason why there's a lot of expectations going into this year. And if some of the draft picks, like for example, Marquez Stevenson, doesn't make it, that's okay. And that just means that we have someone better on our team right now than him. And that is freaking sweet to say.
Yeah, and we'll get to the break, but I got to touch on that real quick. There's so many years of watching Bills football that it's like, the team was just devoid of talent, and, say you had no good options at right guard, and we drafted a guard in the 6th round, and we're like, well, we got this guy that can come in, and, there's these immediate expectations for a 6th round pick to just show up and start. Be the answer as a starter. This is kind of a problem that it's new to me, and I still struggle on a daily basis, looking at the roster and who's going to make it, of saying a guy like Marquez Stevenson might not make the team this year. He might be on the practice squad for a year. We might see him next year. It's like watching a hockey draft when you don't expect to see these guys for 2-3 years. But that's kind of the mark of a good team in the NFL is you're not expecting, plus or minus 7 draft picks to be all impact players on your team. It's okay for the later round picks to maybe take a little time to develop, maybe never actually see the field year 1.
Yeah, it's almost like we're going to have to draft and let them develop.
Weird.
Right. Anyways, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. we're going to finish things up on this episode by talking about day 3 and day 4 of training camp thus far. Now, I'm not entirely sure if this happened on day 3, but, we're just going to try to deliver the notes as we kind of get them. So, pardon us if we get one day, we deliver news on one day, but it really happened like on day 1, or day 2 notes actually happen on day 4. We're just trying to do our best, and we're talking Bills, not professionals. Huge asterisks. Anyways, no surprise here, but the Bills are going to go with the hot hand at running back, so the committee of style backfield. So, and I also heard that Devin Singletary has looked really explosive. Not to take anything away from Moss or Breida, but I've heard that he looks real good. They've also worked on a lot of pass catching out of the backfield when it comes to Moss and Singletary. Breida is already pretty good at that, so nothing surprising there. But in terms of those two, it looks like they've really upped their consumption or really attempts in terms of pass catching. And I rather like that style of going with the hot hand, right? I don't think it's good just to have one guy to take the whole workload, and McDermott's been on the record saying that in the past, saying like it's really not good for our offense to have one person doing it over and over and over again.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that I like about this. Thinking about like other teams game planning against us of like, are we going to get hit up in the middle on the run game? Are we going to have Breida come in, really push our edge the whole game? So I really like the committee approach. The way I feel is kind of the league has devalued the running back position, and kind of having the quote-unquote bell cow running back, it's too much of an investment in the position for me, and 2, it's too many eggs in the basket of, you see a Saquon Barkley go down, you see Ezekiel Elliott go down. It just changes so much about your offense. And what I also see in those situations more than not is some backup guy, Wayne Gallman, comes in and puts up banana numbers, and he's like a hot fantasy ad for that week. What that usually tells me is that it's more about the offensive line in front of those players than the running backs themselves. Yes, they can be super dynamic and game changers and game breakers and all that, but even the most elite running backs at the NFL level aren't doing anything without the line in front of them. So for me, it doesn't really have to be the bell cow running back. What I think we may see throughout the season is more of a game plan specific approach, and kind of, like I said before, not really allowing other teams to game plan for one of the pieces to your puzzle of what you're going to do on offense. So for me, I don't see Breida as taking over that TJ Yeldon inactive every week role. I kind of see that being more of a rotating door of, this team has weak edges that struggle to contain. So we're going to feature Breida this week, and we're going to get to the edge, and we're going to hurt you in the run game that way. We're going to throw some screen passes that your DNs can't cover. And then, the next week we'll
do this, or we'll do that.
Yeah, we have a team we think there's some weak defensive tackles, and we can get a push up the middle. This is a Zach Moss game.
Right.
So I think over the course of the season, we could see a rotation between Singletary, Moss, and Breida all being inactive here and there on game day.
Could happen. It very well could. Either way, I think all 3 of these running backs have a real good chance at making the roster. Again, not sure if this was day 3 news, but it was reported that all the Bills coaches have been vaccinated, and at least 80% of the players have been too. So this is good news for the whole, if there's an outbreak and it's your team's fault, and your team doesn't get paid, and you also you take a loss as well. So that's good for that whole crazy situation. But I'm not sure this will actually happen at all for any of the teams in the NFL, because the NFL proved at the worst time for COVID, they were able to get all the NFL games in. It's just, as we mentioned on our last episode, do they want to be that flexible again? It's like, will they do it?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that changes for me here is that they added a game and that they didn't do a second bye week, which...
Yeah, I wish they did.
Yeah, I don't really understand the approach of not doing the second bye week. It seemed pretty obvious to me, especially in this type of season where you added that game coming out of still going through a pandemic, and what you had to go through last year. It seems like it was pretty obvious to me that there should have been a second bye week. And just logistically for the NFL alone, you're stretching out your season, your product for an extra week. There's just more eyeballs on your sport for longer. So I don't really understand the approach of not doing a second bye week. And I think in this season, it would help with the flexibility if push comes to shove and you had to reschedule a game. But for me, hearing that we're about 80%, it's all good news to me. I think the closer you can get to 100% in the NFL right now is going to be an advantage, not only availability-wise and not missing games or anything like that, but the advantages you can gain in practices and meeting rooms, avoiding Zoom calls because you can be in the same room and, have that close contact and whatever. So the closer we get to that, the better, I think. But I think there's many more advantages around the scheduling. I think if it really comes down to it during the season, the NFL doesn't want to, put a forfeit loss on somebody's record. I think that's just a really hardline threat that they put out there to try to get compliance. But more than that, they want to play these games too.
Right. Last thing on day 3, to my knowledge at least, Ed Oliver and Spencer Brown, they went at it. And no biggie. No biggie at all, because
Could you try again?
Siri, I am telling you, Ed Oliver and Spencer Brown fought, and it was okay because Ed Oliver said, I might get lunch with him later. I don't know yet. Seriously. It's really not a big deal, and apparently Siri doesn't know that, so I gotta inform her. I'll inform you guys as the listener and Siri about what's been going on with the Bills. Lastly, this just tells me that they're playing with a high level of intensity again, and they're just going at it, pushing each other in the right way. So I don't think it's a big deal at all.
I couldn't agree more. From my opinion, these are like the top percentage of 1% of athletes that make it into the NFL. These dudes you have to be top flight competitors to get to that level, and you're lining up against the same guys day after day after day. You see this happen in every training camp and every team in the NFL every year. And honestly, if you're part of an organization that doesn't have this happen once or twice a year, I want no part of that organization.
Right.
These dudes have fight in them. They're fighting for their jobs. They're fighting for millions of dollars on contracts. If you don't have a couple skirmishes once in a while, what are we even doing here?
Yeah, seriously. And also, Josh Allen had a really great day. So,
yeah.
But we're just gonna move on to day 4 because
that's like casual
that's normal,
news now.
I guess. Yeah, that's so nice to say. Right. Anyways, day 4. Let the fans in, Justin. I wish I could have been there, but I had to work at Rochester's finest Italian restaurant, unfortunately. And to my knowledge, you were off camping with no service, so we were both MIA, and we had to live through the Twitterverse and just to get glimpses and videos of what it was like. And it just looked like an absolute blast. And if you were there, I am so jealous that you were just in that area to see it all. After going through a year of not being able to sit in the nosebleeds, to be sitting in the 100 levels watching training camp, that's awesome. The scene itself on social media was literally breathtaking. And it just signaled to me again, and maybe I'm repeating myself, but we're that much closer to the regular season, and I'm just stoked.
Yeah, I can't wait. Like you said, I wish I could have been there personally. We had made these plans well before they announced the public dates. Honestly, we had an amazing time camping. If I had to trade one for the other, I probably would have gone camping anyways. But that being said, I wish they
Trader.
I wish they worked more around my schedule and made this open to me. But yeah, kind of like we talked about earlier with Fisher, just kind of being in those practice atmospheres and getting it's a little more intimate look at the team versus like, going to the stadium on Sunday to watch a game. I remember some of my most fond moments of being a Bills fan came from going to Fisher and watching the training camp.
With your mom?
Mostly my brothers, a couple friends.
Oh, mom mints are pretty cool too.
I see what you did there. Okay. So meeting Jordan Poyer, meeting Stevie Johnson. I have one of my buddies got me a VIP tag signed by like 17 Bills players that were awesome at the time, but never really did anything. It's
Carlos Williams.
Carlos Williams might be on that. I know AJ McCarron's on it, Peterman's on it, Colton Schmidt's on there. Yeah, things like that from a lesser generation of Bills talent fade away quick. But the idea of having that kind of access and contact with the fan or with the players is it's really cool.
Special.
Yeah.
For sure.
Right, I should tell you about the football. I got signed from Little League. I won a raffle in Little League that was signed by probably about 15 Bills players, and Pat Williams was one of them. So there's some credence there, but Pat Williams is a legend. But I had if you're missing Pat Williams, I had Sean Bryson on there, Sammy Morris. I think Larry Centers might have been on there. Yeah, these were the players we used to get excited for.
So if you can't see what I just did and you're listening to this, I signaled all of these players just going over my head because I have never heard of them.
And I just got another year older today.
Hey, it's okay. It's all right. With age comes wisdom. So
they say.
Think about it like that. Anyways, Josh reportedly didn't have that sharp of a day going into day 4, going 15 of 20, so only 75%, which is still really good because he was at like 50% at some times in the 11-11 drills. Although he did have a really good pass over the linebackers and the safeties, I believe, to Knox in the end zone, which shows that Knox maybe he's trending in the right direction. Granted that, I believe the linebacker in coverage was Tyler Medikevich, so maybe not the greatest coverage linebacker ever, but it's still cool to see Dawson Knox still catch a pass.
So I actually saw this one.
Yeah.
When I was catching up on all my highlights, and this one was like classic Dawson Knox, where he catches the most ridiculous ball, and then there's a little flat pass for 2 yards and some run after catch, and he drops it because he's looking upfield. This was like Dawson Knox back at the end zone, getting both feet down, tucking the ball away, just boinking it out of the air.
That was the best pass I heard.
Yeah, it failed to change any opinions I have on Dawson Knox. I'm still very high on Dawson Knox. But what I need to see more from him is the consistency and the routine plays. For me, he's always been able to make those ridiculous plays, and I don't understand the disconnect in between of like dropping this easy catch but making that play.
Well, he's learning. He's a little streaky, but that might change real soon. I don't know. I got a good feeling.
If he makes
and
plays,
the worst pass of Allen's day was when Jermaine Edmonds was out there, the starting middle linebacker, which was tipped by Edmonds and almost intercepted by Josh Thomas. So, a little bit of a higher level of competition for Allen, and I guess not his sharpest day, but whatever, Jermaine Edmonds is very good on his own rights.
I'll take 15 for 20 with a touchdown all day, every day.
For sure. You were saying something? I'm sorry?
I lost it. We'll carry on.
That's all right. Well, we'll move on to Diggs because he sat out the second half of practice, but was out dancing and throwing the ball like he always does with fans. So I think he'll be okay. And moreover, Jake Kumro and Hodgins took first team snaps. That's probably, because Diggs sat out. And there's been rumors that Kumro has been looking real nice, but I'm not going to fall for this trap where I think a practice squad player is just suddenly a top tier wide receiver and is ready to show out. So I am not going to take a bite of the forbidden fruit, Justin.
Got me on the hook. So as far as Diggs goes, I don't read into that at all. I figure that's kind of just like a veteran rest day. Take this half off, with the fans in the stands, everybody getting a little bit more excited than they were. You get a young player or something eager to make a play, roll up on his knee, and all of a sudden he's out for the season. So I think that was probably more caution than anything. As far as Kumro goes, I'm starting to think, I'm retooling my roster prediction we did. I'm starting to think that he's my sixth wide receiver. I've seen a lot of reports coming out that Hodgins is struggling to get off of coverage at the line, which was kind of his not coming out of college, was that he couldn't beat press, which kind of puts him into the mold of just being a big slot receiver, which we kind of have covered right now with Cole Beasley. But Kumaro, the more I hear kind of glowing reviews coming out about him, he was already a special teams standout. And if we're talking about, the actual contributions you likely need from a sixth receiver, I think he's a solid enough player to do that. We're talking like Andre Roberts' role as an actual receiver last year. You're not really asking him to run many routes. You're not asking him to do much. What he contributes to special teams, I think he's a really strong player there. So for my roster projection, I've adjusted it to Diggs, Beasley, Sander, Davis, all locks. McKenzie is like a 75% lock for me. And Kumaro is currently projected as my sixth receiver.
Well, I haven't done a roster. I haven't done a roster, prediction, but maybe that's something I'll do towards the end of training camp when I have more news to go off. Because this is so typical of like how I felt about Bills players in the past. Like I used to think Brandon Riley was going to crack the roster, and he didn't. He never did, and he never will. He didn't even get close to it. So I don't know. I can't. I'm not going to take the bait yet. But all right, we do need to talk about the starters on offensive line from left to right. Bobby Hart John Feliciano, Mitch Morris, Cody Ford, and then Darrell Williams. Kind of seems interesting that Bobby Hart got the snaps over Brown, considering that I've heard and saw Bobby Hart got beaten multiple times. And maybe they're just doing this because, Spencer Brown is still learning, which is fine, which is really fine. But it's not great to know that, Bobby Hart is here.
So
he is not great, Bob.
So nothing personal about Bobby Hart. I don't know the man. Bobby Hart, I don't hate you. I was hoping that the only Bills-related news I would touch on with Bobby Hart is that he was cut from the team. But I kind of developed a theory here because, like you, I would have liked to see Spencer Brown get those reps, We're talking about him being drafted and year one being the swing tackle, right? But McDermott has talked so often about nothing's given, everything's earned. You have to earn your spot, you have to earn your reps, all that. So I'm thinking that maybe Bobby Hart was kind of just trotted out there to be like, Spencer Brown sees the opening there and he's like, I'm about to get playing time. And McDermott's like, sit down. You haven't earned this yet. And just
watch Bobby Hart go to work.
Yeah. And just be on the sideline like, man, I could do better than that. And then maybe kind of just light a little bit of fire in him. And that's my theory. I'm sticking with that.
Right. And let's talk about the performance of that line, since we're already talking about it. There would have been some sacks. Apparently, Epinesa would have gotten a pair of sacks on Allen if, he didn't have the red contact jersey. Same could be said about Rousseau on Trubisky as well, but apparently Rousseau literally did this crazy chop move on Darrell Williams that just blew right by him and just knocked him straight on his butt. So that's pretty encouraging. And F.A. Obata beat Bobby Hart really bad from what I heard.
Shocking.
Like, really, really bad. Kind of like, when you get crossed up in basketball and everyone's like, oh! Like, I guess it was like that bad.
Yeah, I have a couple different opinions here. It's great to see these young players get their, would-be sacks. What I'm kind of thinking is also with that, like, okay, but if you let the play out, Josh Allen didn't have the best line in front of him last year, and he's a goddamn magician back there. So the would-be, they do like a two-hand touch for the sack there. I'm not convinced that they're all sacks. They might be on other quarterbacks, but I'm not willing to give it up that easily.
You never know with them.
Yeah, and
I'll give you that.
I love seeing the news from Epinesa because I think he could have a sneaky good season with this compression-style defense. I think a lot of it is just him being consistent in his job and his role and just playing that style of defense, and Jerry Hughes will flush a lot of sacks to him. So I think Epinesa's in for a really big year. Glad to see the rookies again showing out and kind of putting some stuff on tape and making people think about them. I'd like to see them start stringing some days together like that, where we start really thinking about the kind of noise they can make. The F.A. Obata thing, I'm not really surprised. I think I don't think I've ever been so excited for a fringe roster player that people are talking about, will he get cut or not? I really love F.A. Obata, and I think if he gets a chance to actually make the roster, we're going to see consistent returns from him.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of a fringe player he actually is after hearing all this news. So we'll have to see if more news leaks out, and I might have to reassess my views on him. Moving on, first team reps split between Dane Jackson and Levi. So that's pretty good. We got some steady competition at CB2, Justin. I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, I'll make this one quick. They've brought in competition before, and Levi has not given it up. So, to me, Dane Jackson's fighting an uphill battle, and we'll see if he's got the gumption to take it from Levi.
Right. And the last thing to note that really kind of didn't have to do with training camp, but happened on day 4, is that the fact that the Pegulas would like the new stadium to be paid for by taxpayers. Terry also went as far to say that many cities would love to have an NFL team, but I saw the Pegula Sports and Entertainment PR Twitter account stating the following statement. The PSE organization has no plans to move the Bills and is committed to a sustainable future for the franchise in Western New York. We have begun conversations with local officials regarding government support that is in line with recent stadium builds. Thank you and go Bills. So I'm not really sure what to make of this yet because it just seems like we're getting so many mixed messages, and I don't think taxpayers... I'll put it like this. I don't think it's a good use of taxpayers' money for... I think it's like the entire New York State would have to pay for it, right? So, having a football team is a luxury. It truly is. And not everyone, let's say the whole New York State taxpayers, every New York State taxpayer has to pay for the stadium. Not everyone loves football, and not everyone in New York is, a Bills fan. And if I'm going to be completely honest here, I wouldn't want my money going towards that. I'd rather have it go towards the greater good, like schools, fixing really bad roads.
Really bad.
Getting Justin out on more camping trips, stuff like that. You get what I'm saying. I just don't think that I don't think 1 point whatever billion dollars is a good use of taxpayer money. And the threat of the whole Austin thing kind of emerged, and I just don't really know if I'm buying that, and if they do move, that's going to really upset me and a lot of Bills fans. So I don't really know what to think.
So I have a couple things here. First of all, I don't want to get into this too much until more details emerge, because we're right at the ground floor, and after one day, the story's already changing. As far as the taxpayers paying into the stadium, unfortunately, that's part of doing business in the NFL right now. It's not unprecedented. It's actually pretty common now. What I don't like, and I'm gonna have to go on a mini rant here, is that like day one of this coming out, it's like leaked out that there's a lot of cities in the U.S. that would like an NFL team. Don't give me that shit. I know there's a lot of teams that want an NFL team. Don't start your negotiation with that. And that's all this is right now, is a negotiation. The taxpayers will never pay 100%. The Bills likely aren't moving, but like on day one of negotiations, you're like, well, you're going to pay 100% or we're out of town. Get the fuck out of here. Like, don't bring that to me day one. You have one of the most loyal fan bases in the NFL, and that's not just me talking as a Bills fan. That you cite your sources across the league and how many people talk about Bills Mafia and the love we have for our team and the dedication we have for our team. And we just sat through damn near a 20-year playoff drought when we were still selling out games. We were still filling the stadium in sub-zero temperatures, showing up to support our team. And now it's like, 1 year of success. We need to build a new stadium. And if you guys don't play ball with us, guess what? We're moving. Don't give me that shit day one. Bring that in later on or whatever you want to do. But don't do that to me. Don't do that to me.
Yeah, and another thing I'll add to that is initially I thought that was kind of harsh because the Pegulas bought the team 7 years ago, or 7 or 8 years ago, and saved us from moving to, Canada or LA or wherever the speculation was driving the Bills to leave Western New York at that time. And then when the Pegulas bought the Bills, they got Chris Berman to do like this promotional video on ESPN with the Sabres and the Bills promoting one Buffalo. You put your name on that whole thing, like one city, one ownership, one goal, like, and then you're gonna follow that up 7 years later, going like, "Hey man, like I have no problem about breaking one Buffalo." Like, to me, I was just like, "What, bro? Like what?"
Yeah, realistic
What?
to me,
Like,
it comes off as a negotiation tactic in poor taste that doesn't really have much legs to stand behind. Like I said, you're going to this tactic day one. Like realistically, I don't think there's any chance that they plan on moving the team out of Buffalo. They own the Sabres. They've invested money into the waterfront. They've invested into Buffalo. All that. So like realistically, I don't see it happening. But day one of news coming out about like the negotiation of how it's going to go, and it's like, well, we could have this other one over here. Like, don't do that. I don't like that.
we could leave basically a small competition market in Western New York, but if you guys don't want to pay, we're gonna go to a really high market competition in Texas where they have the Cowboys and they have the Texans and there's college football like teams down there that are actually like really good. We could go there. Like in my head, I was just like, why? That doesn't make a lot of sense. You don't want to enter a market that's already saturated and you're offering the same goods. Like that doesn't make any sense in terms of economics. And that's how I looked at it. I don't know. I'm good on this rant. I don't know about
we both
you.
ranted. We're good.
Yeah. So let's just this is I guess going into next week's episode, but we can just talk about it real quick. John Feliciano got his shoulder kind of tweaked up on today, Monday, and kind of sat out the rest of practice. So not ideal. And apparently Patrick Mahomes watches film on Josh Allen to take notes.
You'd be foolish not to.
So, what are your thoughts on those two things before we wrap up here?
Feliciano, I hope it's nothing serious. I don't think he's a make or break player for this team, but I do think he's one of our best five offensive linemen as of now. As far as the Mahomes things goes, I mean, sure, you'd be foolish not to be watching film on one of the top 5 quarterbacks that kind of gets lumped in with you. And kind of just hearing one of the greats in the league now compare himself to an Allen, Rodgers, Brady, all in the same conversation. He threw Kirk Cousins in there too. I guess he's pretty good. Whatever. But just
pretty good at getting overpaid.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool as like a little sign of respect, but I would much rather at the end of this season hear Allen give Mahomes respect for somebody that he can build off of.
Yeah, and Allen's been on the record saying like, "Hey, I spent a lot of time the off season trying to throw my ball just like Russell Wilson." Now, he doesn't throw it like Russell Wilson because they're just two different, physical specimens, but it's paying homage to some really good players in the league. Anyways, I think that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. Go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe, and review our podcast as well as other amazing shows that you can find on the Built-in Buffalo Network. You know, Justin and I are always looking for great people to join our show, so if you're interested, feel free to reach out to us by searching the Wandering Buffalo Podcast, and you can find that on pretty much any social media account. Justin, where can the people find you, and wish you a happy birthday?
You can always find me on social media at jgods22. We're also, like Andrew said before, on the Built-in Buffalo Network. We got content coming out 7 days a week, a lot of great shows on there. So anything that'll tickle your fancy will be on there. So check it out, Built-in Buffalo Network.
Sure. And also, we forgot to mention, we on the network have a new addition to the team, which is the Not Your Average Podcast and the 716, which we did do a collab episode with back in the day. I think it was like 2 or 3 months ago, but it was such a fun time.
Great people.
And T and Big Mike, real cool people, and I enjoyed them a lot. Great content, great people, great show. Anyways, you can find me on social media by searching up Two Changs. I think that's going to do it for us tonight, Justin.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.